Alexander the Great, conqueror of Persia, king of Macedonia, and the man who built one of the largest empires the world has ever seen, all before his 33rd birthday. That's a few years less than me, actually. And what have I accomplished? But what actually made him so great? Was it his military genius, his charisma, his ambition, or maybe some just good PR? Today we're breaking down the life of Alexander the Great and why history remembers him as one of the most remarkable leaders ever to have lived. Alexander was born in 356 BCE in Macedonia, a kingdom north of Greece. His father was King Philip II, a brilliant general who transformed Macedonia into a military powerhouse. His mother, Olympias, told young Alexander that he was descended from heroes, Hercules on one side and Achilles on the other. That kind of family myth-making gave Alexander a lifelong obsession with greatness. And here's the kicker. One of his tutors was none other than Aristotle, the philosopher. So while Alexander trained in swordsmanship and horsemanship, he also learned philosophy, science and literature. He wasn't just a warrior, he was actually a thinker. At just 20 years old, Alexander inherited the throne after his father's assassination. Most new kings would spend years consolidating power. Alexander, well, he jumped straight into action. Greek city-states like Athens and Thebes thought Macedonia would collapse without Philip. Instead, Alexander marched south and crushed a rebellion in Thebes so brutally that no one dared resist him again. This ruthless move secured his control and gave him the launchpad for something bigger, invading Persia, the largest empire on earth. Here's where Alexander's reputation really takes off. He wasn't just a king, he was a military innovator. He used the Macedonian phalanx, a dense wall of soldiers armed with 18-foot spears, which would smash through enemy lines. He combined infantry with cavalry charges, using speed and precision like no one before him. And he personally led from the front. Alexander didn't just sit back and watch. He fought in battles, got wounded multiple times, and inspired fierce loyalty in his troops. At the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE, he faced the Persian king Darius III, who had maybe 5 times more men. But Alexander's tactics outmaneuvered the Persians, and Darius fled the battlefield. In just one stroke, Alexander had conquered the Persian Empire. But he wasn't content with just Persia. He kept marching through Mesopotamia, Egypt, Central Asia, and into India. At its peak, his empire stretched from Greece all the way to the Indus River, over 2 million square miles. And here's the astonishing part. He did all of that in just over a decade. Alexander, though, wasn't just a conqueror. He also wanted to blend cultures. He founded over 20 new cities, all called Alexandria, the most famous one in Egypt, which became a centre of learning for centuries. He encouraged marriages between his soldiers and local women, adopted Persian dress and customs, and spread Greek culture across Asia. This mix of cultures became known as the Hellenistic world, and it shaped art, science and philosophy for centuries after his death. Now, Alexander's greatness wasn't just about what he did, it was also about how people remembered him. He styled himself as a godlike figure. He claimed descent from Zeus, had himself depicted with divine symbols, and even demanded that his soldiers worship him. His charisma was legendary. Ancient sources say he could inspire soldiers with just a few words, and people followed him not just out of fear, but out of devotion. And the stories about him, whether true or not, helped cement his myth. Like the time he supposedly tamed the wild horse, Bucephalus, as a boy, while no one else could ride him. Or the Gordian knot, a tangled rope that no one could untie. Alexander didn't waste time, just sliced it in half with his sword. These stories weren't just about his actions. They created an image of a man who was destined for greatness. But, as with all men, not everything about Alexander was so great. His ambition pushed his men to breaking point. After years of constant marching and fighting, his soldiers finally mutinied in India, refusing to go any further east. He could also be brutal. In fits of rage, he killed his close friend, Cletius, during a drunken argument. Entire cities were massacred if they resisted him. And his push for cultural fusion sometimes angered his own Macedonian troops, who saw it as betrayal. And then, at just 32 years old, that's a year older than me, Alexander suddenly fell ill in Babylon. Within days he was dead. The cause? Historians still argue it could have been malaria, typhoid, or even poisoning. Without an heir, his vast empire quickly split apart. His generals then decided to carve it up into separate kingdoms to keep within themselves. So, back to the big question. What made Alexander the Great? Well, his military genius. He never lost a battle, even when outnumbered. There was his empire. In just 13 years, he reshaped the map of the ancient world. But his cultural impact lasted too. He spread Greek ideas and created the Hellenistic world, which influenced everything from art to astronomy. But there's also his legend. He turned himself into a myth, and people have been telling his story for over 2,000 years. Yes, he was ruthless. Yes, his empire didn't last. But in terms of ambition, achievement, and influence, there's very few people in history that come close to Alexander the Great. He lived fast, conquered hard, and died young. He left behind not just an empire, but a legend that inspired everyone from Julius Caesar to Napoleon. So maybe the real secret of his greatness wasn't just his battles, it was his ability to make the world believe that he was destined for them. Thanks for watching History of the World. If you've learned something new, click subscribe.